Greetings, Kiti Wadu here. I had the wonderful privilege of having the opportunity to travel to Nairobi, Kenya this past July with a group called the Africa Trade Link Expo. A group of Africans born in the diaspora as well as on the continent, committed to seeing the trade and development of African countries develop at the fastest rate possible with a maximum participation by ourselves, representing wonderful, talented, resourceful Africans from throughout the diaspora. My mission on the trip was to serve as the archiver, gathering photographic and video images of the trip and to bring them back to the world to share, to let everyone know what we know, that Africa is ready to do business at a wonderful scale. While there, though, I had the wonderful privilege of being able to present to the conference. And I just want to share with you a few of the ideas that I had a chance to present, speaking on the subject of the wonderful potential of African agricultural development. Several points I want to make. The first point is that the promise of genetically engineered foods that is widely being proposed as the new green revolution. This reminds us of the earlier period called the Green Revolution in the immediate aftermath of World War II, with the introduction of many farming chemicals introduced into food production, which included some that we now recognize to be terrible mistakes, such as DDT, many chemical fertilizers. We now know that such chemicals became an absolute disaster for humans and many other species. So that does require that we take a closer look at the promise of GE foods. Monsanto is the chief propagator of genetically modified organisms in the world today. Like a giant vacuum cleaner, it seems to be sucking up all of the world's seed stocks and converting fields into Roundup-ready depository of tightly controlled, genetically engineered seeds. Epicite is just one of these genetically engineered organisms that is actually designed to sterilize those who eat the corn in which the gene is secreted. This San Diego-based company that produces this demon seed openly admits that they use proteins from anti-sperm antibodies from the bodies of women who had developed such allergies to sperm. And they fused it within the genetic coding for their patented products. It is likely that much of the corn that is being distributed today contains the sperm-killing genome, and current laws do not require food manufacturers to list GMO ingredients within their products. Roundup-ready crops have been doused with levels of the herbicide, which would not only normally kill the desired crops, but it is a systemic herbicide and thus persists in groundwater as well as in the plants consumed by the public. Definitive research has now proven that the primary ingredient in Roundup, glyphosate, is toxic to bacteria that inhabit the human gut, as well as is injurious to the immune systems of humans and livestock who consume the toxin. Food loss and food wastage are serious issues around the planet. Americans waste some 1,250 calories per person daily, an amount sufficient enough to sustain life in some of the most food-desperate parts of the planet. Across sub-Saharan Africa, food loss accounts for some 30% of all food produced. This is largely due to factors for which new development is making measurable strides. Transportation corridor construction, increase in refrigerated trucking, rural electrification schemes with promises of increase in rural production of fragile agricultural products, cold storage in rural areas, and decreased time in transporting crops to consuming destinations. According to my estimates, decreasing the impact of food spoilage by 50% in sub-Saharan Africa would result in the increase of some $50 billion of income across the continent. Increased reliance upon Western-style food consumption patterns across Africa is now being reflected in rapid rise in rates of chronic diseases associated with wealthy nation nutritional consumption. In particular, African diets, like those of their Asian counterparts, now include more meat, dairy, highly processed foods, sugar, salt, fat, and chemicals than any previous generation outside of the wealthy elite that came to dominate the continent during the colonialism phase. Now we're seeing rapid introduction into the metropolitan areas of fast food restaurants, many of which are franchised from powerful multinational corporations. Like these franchises in the host countries, their patrons are increasingly gorging on chemical-laden food, meats with industrial pharmaceuticals, GMO-laden feed, antibiotics, steroids, Prozac-like chemicals, and worse. The presence of genetically engineered crops into the food chain adds a whole other level of paranoia to our cautious perspective. Incidences of obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, and mental illness are rising at alarming rates across a spectrum of African metropolises. Cheap and easy access to fast foods and highly processed foods is something that we would be best to interrupt before African hospitals are overwhelmed by non-communicable diseases, as is the U.S. healthcare system. Land lease deals, as well as outright land grabs across Africa, are another area of great concern. One such deal in Madagascar came under intense scrutiny and was eventually canceled when the South Korean company Daewoo arranged to lease some 1.3 million acres of prime agricultural land for the paltry sum of only $12 per acre over the course of a 99-year lease. Despite the cancellation of that contract, the company has managed to maintain a presence in the island nation and plans to export its crops back to Korea for domestic consumption. U.S. and diaspora-based agricultural exports and producers have a vital role to play in maintaining the integrity of this anticipated tripling of African agriculture that is being forecast for the coming decade and more. Key factors towards this growth include: 1. Tapping African nations' rapidly expanding middle-class consumers for our products. 2. Providing export for modern farm equipment, harvesters, and irrigation systems. 3. Training U.S. farm professionals as well as supplying training for African partners. 4. Moving our agricultural technology professionals to the continent in large numbers. 5. Providing safe seed stocks, organic farming supplies, and expertise to Africa. And 6. Providing technology for storage, transportation, and for producing finished food products to be manufactured close to the areas of rural farm production. This has been another report from Kidi Awadu. I look forward to partnering with you and many others as we once again return in Nairobi, Kenya, and many, many more destinations in the future.